Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Nice to
Hello.
see everybody. Wow. Hi. So fun. I did not have an RSVP to this event, so
Okay.
I'm just thrilled. I said to Paul, it might just be you and me, honey, talking on the phone tonight. Hold on one second. Hold on the Zoom call. Well, thank you for tuning in, everybody. We're going to wait a few minutes to let a couple other people that I know I think might be showing up come. So people from all over. There's Paul.
Hi there.
Yeah. He's just across the hall over there. As if he hasn't heard all of this many times before, you know. Hi, Cousin Sue.
Hi.
See you. Hi, Marilyn. Marcia, good to see you. All right, Susie Kessler. All right, I don't see you, but I see your name there, so it's good to see your name there. Hi, Abby. Hey, Sarah and Joe, welcome. Gina Kimball, Seattle calling. Good to have you. Good to have you. Hi, Valerie. Hey, Sarah and Joe. Got Wendell coming in from Wendell. Fabulous.
Amy.
Very good. Wow. It's, you know, you never know that doing something like writing a book would bring you to so many people. Many of you I know from lots of things, but others of you I'm just meeting for the first time. So that's really cool and really fun also. Had lots of great opportunities with this book so far. And it's only been a couple of weeks. So I'm going to just get started talking about the book. I want to invite you to please use the chat if you have questions or comments. I'm going to ask everybody to just mute themselves just so we don't have any background noise, if you don't mind. And I will answer questions as they arise. And then I'll also stop periodically to ask you if you have any questions or any comments. For those of you who haven't actually seen the book yet, here is what it looks like. And I can tell you that it's quite a thrill to get a book in the mail. This one happens to also feel very nice. I'm not sure what it's made out of. It has a nice feel to it. I'm not sleeping with it every night, but I could, you know, it has a great feeling. And it was really a pleasure to work with a publisher that believed in me and believed in the mission of this book and was encouraging all along the way and really let me kind of lead in terms of what I knew I wanted and what I knew I was after in terms of the style of the book and the way that it read and whatnot. So I feel very blessed to have had a publisher that wasn't fighting me kind of tooth and nail on various parts of a book. Of course, many of us have self-published books, not me, but many people on this call have. And that's another great option. I didn't want to do that for this particular book. I feel like it was important to have a traditional publishing contract. Some people have asked me about my process of writing the book, which I thought I would talk about for a few minutes, just because you're here and it might be of interest for those of you who have ideas and things that you've been thinking about, maybe putting down to paper and sharing with the world. My process was really quite organic. I had written a series of articles on an online platform called Medium the previous year, in 2021. And when I did that, I got a lot of, and it was on the same topic. It was titled, "You Finished Treatment, Now What?" And there were 10 installations of that. This book has 18 chapters, so I've certainly expanded it and I expanded each of those. But with those pieces on Medium, I got a lot of feedback from people. Some were patients, some were friends, some were family members, and then I also got feedback from strangers. I don't know if any of you have had that experience, but feedback from strangers is really kind of interesting. You think, wow, I wrote something that's hitting a nerve with people in a good way, you know, resonating with people in a way, and looking for more depth and more breadth on the various topics that are included in this book. And people kept saying, oh, you know, I really think that would be a great book. And I would think to myself, like, oh my God, I don't need another project right now. also, I don't really want to be in the cancer space 24/7. You know, I've had cancer, I did cancer, I survived cancer, I seem to be thriving since cancer, but I didn't really want to be in the cancer space 24/7. And I can tell you that when you even have a traditional publishing contract, they still expect you to do a lot of the marketing. And so for the last 5 or 6 months, ever since the book, the cover contest went out, I think that was in maybe July, so not quite that long. So since July, it's been like hours every day working on promoting this book and marketing. And I think I've done up to 41 podcasts. I mean, that's a lot of podcasts. It's a lot of time talking about cancer. So I find that the more I talk about the book and the more I launch the book out into the world, the more I want to expand the breadth and the reach of what I'm actually talking about in the book, which is what I'd like to start with here tonight. I feel that the things that are written about in the book and the way that I pull it together, this is also information that is important for healthy living across the board. So there's about 65, I'd say, to 70% of the book, if people read it and listen to it and hear the content, will also will help to prevent recurrence. And certainly there are parts of the book that address specific complaints that people have since going through cancer, since going through treatment. But a lot of the book is about how to work with and change our internal environment in order to be less hospitable to cancer coming back. And those very same approaches are also pertinent for helping prevent cardiovascular disease, helping prevent diabetes, helping prevent cognitive decline, helping prevent other autoimmune and chronic kinds of ailments. So it's sort of like, I feel every time I stand in front of a microphone or get in front of a Zoom call, I do have a sense that this book is bigger than just about cancer, and it's bigger than just about how we can help the people in our lives that have been touched by cancer. You know, 1 in 3 Americans are going to have cancer. We all know people that are living with cancer, have gone through cancer, are survivors of cancer. Sadly, this is an epidemic illness, as are other lifestyle preventable ailments. We know now that the 3 big killers, heart disease, cancer, and diabetes, those are the 1, 2, 3, heart disease first, cancer, then diabetes. In America, we know that about 80% of people who develop these complaints, it is lifestyle preventable. So I'm just going to say that one more time. About 80% of the top 3 killers in America are at 80%-ish lifestyle preventable. So what does that mean? It means that we have a tremendous amount of work to do in terms of preventive medicine, in terms of educating people related to the power that they have, the self-agency that they have to make better choices, whether it's about food or about exercise or about stress management or about the toxins in their environment or about the quality of their sleep. We have some self-agency that is sort of something that has gotten lost over the years. The current medical paradigm does not speak to this, enough. I'm not against conventional medicine. Those of you who know me, and I just am seeing some dear friends who just hopped on that I'm just going to give a shout out to. Great to see you, Amy Johnson, Portland, Oregon, Paulette Bliss at St. Louis, Polly Ingraham from New Hampshire. I mean, wow, this is really fun. It's like having a party. Pam Roberts, Renee Rossi, so good to see your names up there, you guys. Show me your faces when you get a minute. I'd love to see you. Yeah, so there's just so much that we can do. I'm not against conventional medicine. Honestly, in 2014, when I was diagnosed with early breast cancer, I had a double mastectomy. I had 4 rounds of chemo. I had 28 radiation shots to my chest wall. I paused for about 15 minutes. A month later, I was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. I had a complete hysterectomy. I had 12 more rounds of chemo. So I'm not against conventional medicine. A few people have said to me, I spoke today with the executive director of the Gilda Radner Club in one of the Midwest cities, and they're very interested in having me come on board and do some talking for them and promote my book, which is lovely. And they have centers all over the country. But she said, we have to be sure that you're not against conventional medicine. And I told her that the same, lineup of what I experienced in 2014. She says, okay, I get it. I'm not against conventional medicine, but conventional medicine is very busy with addressing the disease state. They're very interested in working with people who are already sick. The idea of working in a more preventive way and really using the power of natural medicine through food, through plants, through things like homeopathy and acupuncture, through hands-on approaches, to really giving people the skills and the tools they need with the head game. You know, we're basically, stress is killing us, right? So what are the tools that my patients have in order to address their stress and to raise their threshold for feeling stress and dissipate the stress that they have and take a good look at their lives? Like, what are the things that are really stressful and are not working for them? And is there any wiggle room in terms of shifting those kinds of dynamics? So for me, this book gives me a platform, and it gives me a little bit of an opportunity to speak on these issues in greater detail, of course, and to really use my 36 years of practice as a licensed naturopathic doctor and my experience raising a family and also going through conventional cancer care, through those lenses, to share what I know and to share it as widely as possible, and to inspire people to make the, hi Carol, aloha, and to make make it plain and clear that even small incremental changes that are more sustainable than total overhauls make a difference. And that we're all a product of our genetic inheritance. I happen to get sort of an unlucky gene related to breast and ovarian cancer, but everybody's, you know, we come in fully loaded, and we're a product of our genetic inheritance. And then all the choices that we've made over our lifetime kind of stack up with us or against us, if you will. And until the day we die, we always have the opportunity to make good choices and to sidestep the things that aren't good for us and to recreate anew. You know, we have billions and billions of cells. They're regenerating all the time. So we might as well be working to give them the best nourishment and the best possibility and the best kind of compilation of putting together a life that moves us more toward healing than toward a disease state. Okay, I'm going to just go over here and look in the chat for a second. Hi, Amy, I'm so excited for you. I'm halfway through and it's excellent. I know that it will help so many people. Sending you a love. Oh, thank you, Susie. I really appreciate that. My cousin Janet Curry posts, I love Janet. You give her a big hug for me. I've never met her, but I love her. She's just a wonderful, wonderful person, teaches mindfulness meditation. My cousin Janet Curry posted this on Facebook, which is where I saw it. I just had my last immunotherapy a few weeks ago and was wondering, now what? So this is perfect. Excellent. And congratulations for getting through the immunotherapy. I also had immunotherapy toward the end of my treatment, and yeah, not that easy. Thank you, Katrine. Thank you. I thought I would read a little bit from the beginning of the book just to set the tone a little bit. And meanwhile, you can feel free to keep writing in the chat there, and I'll go in and review what's in there periodically here. One of the most incredible parts about writing this book was when I was finished with the manuscript, I decided to get an agent so that I could hopefully have the book sold to a traditional publisher. And when I first spoke with the agent who I eventually signed on with, she said, the first thing you need to do is you need to send your manuscript to, like, 8 or 9 people and try to get advanced praise for your book. So anybody who knows me knows that I'm not going to stop with 8 or 9 people. I sent it to 30 people. And I thought, well, my chances of each one of them writing, they were about half medical doctors or osteopaths, a sprinkling of naturopathic physicians who work in integrative oncology. I wanted people from across the medical world, so chiropractor, acupuncturist, kind of like that. And then a couple of friends whose work I admire, and I know they were good writers and they're fans of me. Sarah Schley, one who goes in that category. So every single person wrote a blurb, and I was blown away by that generosity of spirit, if you will. And the time that people took to do that is very humbling. One person out of that 30 said no, and I believe it's due to a conflict of interest in a book that she is working on, which is totally fine. I get that. She was very polite about it. That's okay. But it was, and so that advanced praise makes up the first like 10 or 15 pages of the book. Then my agent was like, you got to stop with the advanced praise. It's going to take up half the book. So I laid off on that after a while. All right. So One thing I'm sorry about having to do this in person, not in person, is that for the book launch that was in person, I made at the top of each chapter, you can see there's a small little, let me get rid of this chat for a second. There's a small little true north sign here. And I got some beautiful dark chocolate from Lake Champlain Chocolates up in Vermont. And I made clear stickers with that picture on it. And I was giving out those chocolates to people. So I'm sorry, I can't give those to you. If I could, I'd just put them, push them, smush them right through the screen for you. So, all right, I'm going to read from the introduction a little bit. You'd think the last day of chemotherapy or the final radiation treatment would be a time to rejoice and celebrate. But for many cancer patients, the last day of treatment is soon followed by a sense of dread and despair. The fighting stance and the rallying cries end. The outpouring of support slows. It's on to life as usual, which isn't easy if you don't feel well, and medical active surveillance seems to be served up with a hefty portion of stress and anxiety. I know this terrain intimately as a cancer survivor and thriver and as a licensed naturopathic doctor. I was living a healthy lifestyle and blessed with pristine health when I was diagnosed with breast and then ovarian cancer in 2014. I wrote extensively on the topic of using natural medicine during my own cancer treatment. It was certainly eye-opening to be a patient in the patient chair after so many years as a doctor. I had the great fortune of receiving state-of-the-art conventional treatment at a world-renowned teaching hospital and locally at my smaller hometown cancer center. I was in excellent hands with some of the smartest people I've ever met. I also had guidance and encouragement from brilliant colleagues in the naturopathic profession who specialize in integrative oncology. And then here, just like we used to show the kids when we were reading books, this is a picture of me during chemotherapy. I'm really rocking the babushka on my head. I didn't have any hair. Walking the halls of the hospital because I was trying to get my steps in while I was in care there. Okay. Integrative oncology is defined as patient-centered, evidence-informed field of comprehensive cancer care that uses body-mind practices, natural products, and lifestyle modifications from different traditions alongside conventional cancer treatments. It prioritizes safety and best available evidence to offer appropriate therapeutic interventions along with conventional care. I believe that as patient demand and research continue to grow, integrative oncology will be the standard of care for every patient going through cancer care and throughout their survivorship years. I've been lucky over my career to have warm and meaningful relationships with colleagues. We consult with each other on difficult cases and share information. Because no doctor should treat themselves, when I was diagnosed, I immediately reached out to a number of naturopathic doctors who were enormously generous and caring, for which I am eternally grateful. My goals with naturopathic approaches were several: to enhance the efficacy of conventional care, to prevent and minimize side effects, to address side effects that arose, and to glean general support throughout my time of treatment. My naturopathic physician providers regularly scour the medical research, distilling complicated biochemistry related to cancer and its treatment, and provide up-to-date information after my care as well. During that entire time and since, I've also had unparalleled in-house help from my devoted husband and partner, Paul Herskew, ND, MPH over there, a veritable research phenom who left no stone unturned to find the best possible medical paths forward, seamlessly blending my conventional and natural medicine plans while at the same time offering endless encouragement and comfort. My cancer treatment, after cancer treatment, I have personally committed to many of the approaches described in this book and continue to take my health and my ability, this is the key word, my ability to impact my health seriously. I kicked up my already healthy relationship to exercise. I further tidied up my diet. I let go of certain commitments and people in my life that caused me undue stress. I added specific anti-cancer supplements to my daily intake and so much more. I continue to work with my naturopathic physician colleagues as well as my oncologists, and we create a treatment plan that dovetails with the details of my medical history and also takes into account my temperament and my capacity to do the work that is part of getting well and staying healthy. I continue years out with approaches that encourage physical vitality, spiritual peace, mental clarity, and emotional balance while doing all that I can to reduce my risk of cancer. Should my cancer ever return, which I deeply hope it does not, I will always feel I did as much as possible to protect the life I hold so dear. Creating a plan, committing to it, and modifying as needed is empowering. I aim to model much of the content of this book to my patient, understanding firsthand what it means to be disciplined without becoming rigid, what it takes to make changes without disrupting my family life, and how to make small sacrifices while also taking pleasure in the day-to-day moments of my life. So that's for my introduction. And I am going to go to the chat now, see what else we have here. Let's see. I like how it is organized as a reference book, which is easy to look around. Yes, one of the things, there's a chapter in the book, which is basically called How to Use This Book, in which I say that every chapter in the book is really freestanding. You don't have to sit and read it cover to cover. I kind of like people to, but most people, what they do, they pick it up and they turn to the page that is relevant for them. They have lymphedema, they go right to lymphedema. They have issues with their gut, they go right to the diet. They are a caregiver. I have a whole chapter in the book on caregivers as survivors. Many of you know that I dedicated this book to my dear sister Joan, who we lost to cancer a couple of years back. And I had the opportunity to caretake her in my home for a year and then nearby for another year. It's a big job, and there's a lot in there, details for people who are caregivers to think about, and so sort of some to-do lists, which I think are helpful. I've heard from others, quite helpful. The Audible link thing you did works. Oh, okay, very good, very good. I'd like to give away a few of the Audible versions of the book, and we just learned the last couple of days that it has now launched. It takes about 2 weeks after the book launches on Amazon. And I should say publicly that I am encouraging people to buy the book on Bookshop or IndieBound as opposed to on Amazon. I just prefer to support local independent bookstores. Any of you who are local here, the Odyssey in South Hadley has copies on the shelf, but any bookstore in your town or your city, an independent bookstore can order the book and you'd get it in a few days. So go to your independent bookstores if you can. Then go over to Amazon and leave a nice 5-star review. I would really appreciate that. My publisher says you have to say that every time you talk to a group. Go leave a nice review on Amazon or Barnes & Noble. I appreciate that. So I have some, let's give away some Audible books. Who has a birthday this week? Anybody have a birthday this week? Put it in the chat. If you've got a birthday this week, or maybe an anniversary or something like that, put it in the chat and Paul will capture your name and we'll reach out. Send us your email. I'd love to give away a few copies of of the Audible version. I read the Audible version. Did I mention that myself? I have a wonderful audio engineer, Peter Acker, Armadillo Audio Group in Pelham, the next town over. I was a little intimidated going to him because when I got there, I saw on his shelf all of the people who he has engineered their audiobooks, everybody from Isabel Allende. I mean, like just some of the major names. I felt a little intimidated by that, but he was very generous and very encouraging. And he has a beautiful resonant voice. And he did the intro and the outro to the book. And every time I'd hear him talk, I'd be like, oh, you should just read the whole book. You sound so good. But he made me sound good. So I'm so appreciative of that. Okay, let's see. I'm hoping to get the King County Public Library to purchase your book and make it available to everyone. Thank you, Katrine. Thank you. There's a possibility to have your book available in audio. Yes, there is. Preferably now. Yes, by me. I'm so animated and passionate about your work. And a born teacher. Oh, thank you. Thank you for saying that. I will say that the Audible book, I think the quality is quite good. But I had a long talk with Peter about this, and he encouraged me to be dynamic and to have variations in my voice, but it's different than you're literally in a soundproof room. It seemed like could be safe from a nuclear war. You're in a soundproof room, very dead air. There's no image anywhere except the iPad with your words of your book on it. and there's nobody to interact with. Like, I'm a people person. So I did find reading into that microphone, I could only do it for 2 or 3 hours at a time. And it took about 16 hours, I think, to read the book. So I hope that you won't be disappointed by the audiobook if I'm not quite as animated, because it's hard to hold that up when you're just in a darkish room with not a lot of oxygen, seemingly. Okay. Oh, Marilyn says she's downloading the audiobook now. Oh my goodness, fabulous. That's so exciting. Okay. Abby's saying, you've always been a wonderful writer. I'm so glad you wrote this important book. Thank you. Thank you. So good. All right. And you're getting one from Powell's, Amy. That's very good. I am trying to do a book event at Powell's. Powell's, many of you know, is a big, big, amazing football field of a bookstore in downtown Portland, Oregon. And I now have a son. Our son, Jonah, is the assistant coach with the Portland Trailblazers. So we have an opportunity to be in Portland more. This is where Paul and I met, went to naturopathic school in Portland. So for us, it's really like a coming home. So I'm in touch with Powell's. They say they're going to get some on the shelf for us. And I'd like to plan for a spring event at Powell's. So Amy, I'll see you then. I'll come take a sauna. All right. People have any questions about the content of the book or things related to cancer treatment or survivorship years? I'd be happy to take a few questions that you have. Hi, Valerie. Oh my goodness, from Snow Farm. Oh, wow. So good to see you. I talked yesterday to Susie Banks-Baum, our teacher there, and she was amazing. Amazing teacher. We had a nice chat yesterday. Yes, this recording will be available. I will have it on my author website, which is dramyrothenberg.com. It'll take us probably till tomorrow to upload it. I will put it on the website under as a blog post, so you can find it there. You can also find a lot of other interesting information on my author website. I do try to add things periodically. I have a lot of recipes there, those of you who are interested in natural medicine cooking. I also have a number of pieces that I wrote when I was going through treatment. I resurrected a few of those, scrolled backwards in time to find those from 2014. And there's also just some other fun stuff. I've done all these podcasts, and every time I do a podcast, oops, sorry. I stopped my video for accidentally. Every time I do a podcast, I put it up on my author site. I send it out on social media and I put it up on my site. So if you want to hear more, and every podcast I do, I have to say it's been really an incredible opportunity, because every person who's interviewing me comes from a different perspective and a different angle. I've done some podcasts with naturopathic doctors who are integrative oncologists. I've done some podcasts around women empowerment. I've done some that are related to just strictly survivorship and everything in between. And I have a number of other ones coming up. So every time, it takes them usually a week or two to get them to me. Whenever I get one, I post it up. This is part of the whole marketing piece that I'm trying to continue. I keep learning about. Okay, let's see. I'm going to go back over to the chat. Oh, Powell says 20 books in stock. That's wonderful. I am doing a fundraiser in a couple of weeks for the National College of Naturopathic Medicine, where I went, and a number of you on the call went, or to a sister school. I'm doing a fundraiser for them. It's a talk on the topic of the book, and all the proceeds will go to the free clinic that they have at the school, and to patients who need access to natural medicine who can't afford it. So I'm very excited about being able to participate in that fundraiser, which reminds me, if any of you have a person, a podcast, an organization, a book club, a cancer support group, you can ask me, and I will be happy to come to the group. Hi, Rick Last, nice to see you right across the river. And Martha Thayer over there from outside of Seattle. Wonderful to see you, Martha. See your name up there. I am really I have an open policy. If you have a place where you'd like me to come speak, please invite me as my calendar allows. I would love to do that and continue to spread this information from this book and this topic. Okay, so let's see. Powell Books has 20 copies. That makes my day. Okay. Polly's asking, can you say a bit about the process of writing the book? do you have a sense of the structure of it right from the beginning, or did this evolve? That's a really great question. Because I had written a 10-part series on Medium, I basically went with that as my outline. I have done a lot of writing in my life for the last, since I think I've had my first article published in 1984 when I was still in naturopathic school. I have one journal. I've written an article in every one of their issues since 1986 quarterly. So that adds up. And I always write from an outline. And I also do a lot of work with, I try to mentor other people in the natural medicine world. And a lot of the mentoring is around writing and speaking on topics in natural medicine. And if it's about writing, I always start my, whatever I'm sending out to them, I'm happy to work with you. I only work with a person if they send me an outline, because working without an outline is just frustrating for everybody. You don't really know where you're going. You don't know which stops you want to make along the way. So I had an outline, and I should also preface by saying that I started out this book writing it with a colleague, Tina Kazor, who you should follow on Instagram, Kazor, is a brilliant mind in my profession. She also is the co-host of a wonderful podcast called The Cancer Pod. It's terrific. You should go if you're interested or need information on this topic. Very user-friendly, public-facing, but also great for providers. She works with a woman named Leah Sherman, who herself is a breast cancer survivor, and they have put together a terrific podcast series. I was a guest on their podcast. It was one of the first ones I did, and it was nice to be initiated by sort of people that I knew who already knew me, and we had a great conversation. So I originally started writing this book with Tina. We sat down, we wrote the outline, we started with the structure of my 10-part series on Medium, added the introduction, you know, the things toward the end, a whole chapter on specific health complaints that cancer survivors have. And we met 2 or 3 times, we wrote some sample things, and she called me a couple of weeks into the process. She says, you don't need me. You don't need me. This is your book, and your voice has to come through this book. I'm like extraneous. I'll support you. I'll give you ideas about research. And you know, anybody who picks up this book, there's 350 something references in this book. Everything I say in the book, I tack down to something from the medical literature. I wanted to be above somebody saying, oh, that's a bunch of hooey. It's tacked down in the medical literature. If I'm saying that the use of the herb curcumin is good for the treatment of fatigue for people who are living with cancer or survivors, it's because there are many studies about the use of curcumin, and then I list out several of them. I also did that with the eye of people going to their doctor, and their doctor, conventional doctor, rolling their eyes at some of the things they might be wanting to explore. Well, here, you can look online, find that reference, and maybe print it out or send a link to the doctor. And this is why I'm thinking about using fish oil for my peripheral neuropathy, and it won't interfere with my chemotherapy. And here's the research to show that. So, but to further answer your question, Polly, once I had that outline and I knew I was kind of sailing the ship on my own, I expanded it to almost the whole book. But then when it got over to going through my agent and was sent out to a number of publishers before the publisher I worked with bought the book, I got feedback from the publishers about this chapter needs to be expanded. You need to have more about this area. This is something people are interested in. In the first part of the first rendition of the book, I had no patient stories. And it was somebody in a publishing company who was not taking any cancer books at the moment. They declined buying the book because they weren't taking things in this genre. They said, but I love the book. But one thing I think could be really helpful is if you could do some illustrations of your points in, per chapter based on any experiences you've had in the clinic. So I went back through the book and I culled my charts at my office, and I found patients that had situations where I could use them as examples with changing any identifying information, of course, because of HIPAA and people's privacy, but really using their patient stories as a way to illustrate some of the information that's in the book. And then it was the editing process where, you know how that is. I mean, Polly, you're a writer. I mean, you could read something 100 times and keep changing it. I did at some point, I had a deadline. A deadline was very helpful for me. I had Paul read it first. He's always my first and best editor and offered so much insight for me. And there's a lot of things that I know and I do, and I don't articulate them because they're just such a part of my long, many-year work as a naturopathic doctor. And so really articulating things for readers was something that I kind of forced myself to do, because I don't want to talk down to anybody. I don't want to dumb it down, but I also don't want to talk in a way where people can't understand it. So striking that balance. This is a public-facing book. This is not necessarily a book for researchers. It's really a book made for both cancer survivors, people who love them, but also for providers, because I think providers need to hear. It's something like 65 to 70% of anybody who is living with cancer, gone through cancer treatment, is a survivor, or in current conventional cancer treatment, is using some form of natural integrative medicine. And the conventional medical world is not, they don't have their head in the sand about it. They know this is happening, but they don't have enough information and facility with all of the different approaches that are possible to actually make good recommendations. I mean, this is going to change. This is definitely going to change. This is where we are this moment, but patient demand. And I think also the fact that younger and younger people are getting cancer, and a lot of younger people, they're not just going to go with the flow just because the doctor said so. They're going to want to know why. And they're going to want to push a little bit and like, well, what about the ketogenic diet? And what about the, and people come to me all the time with information and new information, things I don't know anything about. And I have to sometimes say to them, I'm not sure about that. I'll get back to you and do some of my own research. And by the way, ketogenic diet is not shown to be helpful for prevention of recurrence of cancer, with the exception of glioblastoma. It shows a little bit of impact on the outcome of people with very progressive brain cancer called glioblastoma. And there is some research about that. Okay, Paul's saying that if you get the audiobook, you should listen to it at 1.1 speed. It's a lot closer to my natural voice. Okay, that's true. I did seem like the fellow I worked with kept saying to me, slow it down, which I tried, but it wasn't easy for me. Okay, let's see. Just going over to the chat. Valerie's saying, thanks, Amy. Already read the book cover to cover. Oh my goodness. That was quick. It's great. Sending a few copies out to friends now. Maybe I can review it on my blog. I would love if you did that. And if you do review it, or if anybody else reviews it somewhere, send me the review and I will send that out on my social media and put it on my website and help promote and advance whatever you're trying to get out into the world. It's definitely the whole thing with social media. It's really, you got to play the game and share other people's things. And that's been really a fun process. It reminds me of in the olden days of chain letters, like in the best possible way. You just don't know where things are going to land. So, okay. Carol is asking, do you know any ND that I like in San Diego? I'm a Medicare patient at Kaiser and I haven't asked there yet. Carol, can you send me an email at dramy@gmail.com, DRAMY Rothenberg, Dr. Amy Rothenberg @gmail.com, and I'll find somebody for you. And let me know, you don't have to say it here, but let me know in the email what it is you're looking for, what you need help with. Because there's a lot of people in San Diego, because there is a naturopathic medical school in San Diego. So there are wonderful people there. I've taught at that school many times. Paul and I taught a whole course there over 2 years, a couple of years back before COVID. So we have a lot of contacts there, but give me a little bit of information so I can give you the best referral. Okay, let's see. Amy, I am certain my friend Melanie, I bought your book, would love for you to do a talk to her group of cancer moms. Oh, yes. When you are set with your pals date, we can set something up, or I'm sure they could do it via Zoom. Fabulous. I'm good with an E introduction. Just give me an E introduction. I can take it from there. Yes, it's great. Okay. Our Paul wrote in there. Okay. Paulette, I loved your statement that our cells are regenerating all the time. It's encouraging because that means that doing things to take care of ourselves is always worthwhile, no matter where you start. That is so true. That's so true. Yeah. I mean, I think that people forget about this, and they think that where they are at this moment is where they are going to have to always be. And it's not true. We all have the capacity to change. And little changes that are ongoing can have a big effect. So it's sort of like you change the arc, of your story, and then you really go in a different direction. I feel like I missed a question from talk about, I saw it earlier, hang on one second, give me a minute here. I think it was from you, Marilyn. Did you ask another question about?
Yeah, a question.
Please say more about not becoming rigid. I love that question. That's just such a good question. How many of you have ever met somebody who's going into the natural medicine world and they're so rigid, it's hard to be around them? Well, certainly the people who are in practice are raising their hand. I can't eat that. I don't do that. I don't do that. And they're living in such a way that it's very constrictive to them. And it's also driving the people that they live with crazy. And it's not rational, it's not reasonable. And a lot of times people who are very, very rigid, the things that they're doing, there's no evidence that those things are helpful. That's the ones that really drive me crazy. So of course, you can't say that to somebody. So you have to present the evidence and gently work with them. Try to understand where does that rigidity come from? What are they trying to balance for? Like a lot of people who feel like things are very out of control get very, very rigid, because that's a way to exert some control. And there's lots of people that feel like things are out of control. And also I'm going to put in a word here about our current political situation in America, across the world. People are so stressed out. There are a lot of things that are out of control. Things around our environment are problematic. Things related to, the list goes on. So I get that, but I often feel like being rigid in response to those kind of things, while it might feel good and it might have some short-term benefits, not sustainable. It's not sustainable. And I feel like people aren't living their fullest potential and their fullest lives. So part of this work for me, like with my patients, it's not just about the patient not dying or the patient not getting cancer again, or the patient not having whatever neurologic disease they have, or what we fill in the blank. It's about, can the person be authentic to who they are in this moment as a human being? And can they have more peace in their own heart? And from that place, can they do whatever it is, the work or the play or the relationships, the friendships, in their life that gives them any sense of satisfaction or pleasure or enjoyment or connection. And that's really what I'm going for. This is a specific topic within it, but in my work in general as a licensed naturopathic doctor over the last, going toward 4 decades, I feel like that's my job. And what a privilege is to sit with people one by one and hear their stories and hear their pain and hear their sorrow, and hear their hopes and their wishes. I mean, it's really quite a privilege to sit with somebody, and then also to be able to offer them some help. I mean, that's really the best thing. Okay, let's see, there's another message down here. Marcia is saying, let's see, Polly's first saying, that's so interesting, Amy, and the time it took to gather all those medical references, strengthening everything. Saying, oh my goodness, yes. Well, Paul can attest to that. I spent a lot of time on PubMed, and also tried to be careful about. There's a whole concept in the medical world, which is, and research world, which is called cherry picking, where you just cherry pick just the research you want people to see, and that's not really the best kind of research to do. I'm sure there's some cherry picking in what I've done, but I've tried to be as broad looking as possible. And I, give credit where credit is due. Many of the things that I'm recommending, I learned from my teachers. One of the interesting things everybody should know is that the naturopathic profession, there are things that Paul and I and people senior to us, our teachers, have been doing for decades and decades, and there was no research to back them up. Now, the studies are coming out. Yes, being deplete in zinc is going to make you more susceptible to COVID. The studies are coming out that being replete with vitamin D is going to keep you safer during the viral infection time of year. I mean, we've been saying that since the 80s anyway, when we began our practice. And it's really very heartening to see the research catching up. There is a whole thing in medicine, which is called translational medicine, which is the idea that things are happening in the laboratory and we're learning things in the laboratory and they don't get to the bedside. They don't get from the bench to the bedside, until some years later. So we have some interesting research and capacity and knowledge related to cancer and related to the treatment of cancer, among other illnesses, that the research is there, but we're not there yet in terms of our ability to access it in a medical clinic, get our insurance to cover it. We're not there yet. So translational medicine is challenging. We're getting better. The internet has helped a lot. Correspondence, it helped a lot. I mean, when I was first doing writing in the natural medicine world, I was literally on a typewriter. I was typing on paper. I was making copies of it on a copy machine, or sometimes I was typing with carbon paper to make a copy as I typed. Some of you are this age range. And I was putting them in an envelope and I was mailing them off and I was waiting weeks and weeks to get any response. Now, as soon as it's out of your mouth, you can publish it. It's a little bit, sometimes in some ways it was better when there was a little bit of a delay. There's a lot of information on the internet that's, is wonderful. And there's a lot that's terrible. And there's a lot in between. And I would say that for cancer, people living with cancer and cancer survivors, there's so much on the internet. It's not all good. A lot of it's very expensive and you have to really be careful. So any of you on the call who are a survivor yourself, find yourself an integrated oncologist or a naturopathic doctor who works in oncology so you can have a partner. You're not going through it alone. You can have a partner who can help you determine, what would be the best approaches for you. We all are made up. It's biochemical individuality. What's good for one person is not necessarily good for another person, might be even bad for another person. So there are a few more things in the chat, but let me just give a few broad strokes about general concepts in the book, because there are some concepts that come through that are thematic through the book. So I can share some of those with you if you like. The first one is that regardless of where somebody is in their cancer story, exercise is essential. So whether it is an issue with fatigue, cognitive challenges, chemo brain, some people will call it, issues around pain and inflammation, whether it is lymphedema, peripheral neuropathy, whether it is fear around cancer recurrence and anxiety, exercise is the #1 treatment. I feel a little bit like a broken record, but it truly is the #1 treatment. And this is both with regard to, we think about exercise in 3 areas: aerobic, weight bearing or resistance training, and something stretching. And if you only have time for one, do the aerobic, because what aerobic exercise will do is it will help to raise your threshold for feeling stress. So the same interactions with people, thoughts in your mind, experiences, events that happen, bad news, you have a higher threshold for those things getting you out of whack. It also, exercise helps us to dissipate the stress and the anxiety that we do have. We all have it. If you're alive, you have stress, and stress isn't all bad. Some stresses are good, but to be alive is to be a being in a world where things are happening that we have reactions to. And when we exercise, we raise our threshold for feeling stress, we dissipate the stress we have. And lastly, we're better perfused. So the blood is moving to the different places in the body that it needs to get. So, and hopefully, you're doing things through your diet and maybe a few supplements, some herbs, so you have better blood. Your blood is moving, the better blood is better moving throughout your body with exercise. So I always start slow with people. People have different relationships to exercise. Some people never exercise and they're like that, I can do anything, but don't make me exercise. Other people have negative experiences. They were forced to do something. So we just try to take people where they are, baby steps, build up, get people going in a positive spiral of health. I find that when people start making one good change, it leads to other positive changes. So we take it slow, but exercise. #2, eating an anti-inflammatory diet. Anti-inflammatory diet is basically lots of fruits and lots of vegetables. The idea here is a diversity of vegetables. The more vegetables you can eat, the better off you are. I give myself a goal of eating 10 vegetables a day. I don't always reach it. Little advice I can give you about 10 veggies a day: eat 1 or 2 with breakfast. If I am eating like a typical breakfast, eggs and toast, I'll eat a carrot. If I'm having oatmeal, I'll steam real quick some kale. Just get 1 veggie in there, or I'll eat some leftover veggies from dinner last night. I'll usually have a big salad for lunch where I can get 5, 6, 7 veggies in there, and then 1 or 2 with dinner. I got my 10. If I get 6 in a day, I'm also happy. So don't stress, don't get rigid. Whole grains, so getting rid of the white flours in our diet, they don't serve much purpose at all. Whole grains, things like quinoa, millet, brown rice. You can now get all kinds of gluten-free pastas that you can consider your grain. Many of them are made out of legumes or whole grains. Lean proteins across the board, excellent. Eggs are fine. And then healthy oils, nuts and seeds, olive oil, avocado, coconut oil. And that's pretty much it. There's not processed food, chemical additives, preservatives. We should try to avoid those as much as possible. I have a whole chapter in the book about getting rid of and reducing the amount of toxins that we are exposed to. We can't control everything. We can't control the air, the water. That falls more under the rubric of working on environmental causes, which if you have the bandwidth for, awesome. But we can control what we put in our bodies. Alcohol, there's not really a safe amount of alcohol for a cancer survivor, I'm sorry to say. It should certainly be limited. Women, 1 drink a day if they're going to drink it all. Men, 2. It should never be more than that. And less is more with regard to alcohol for a lot of different reasons. It's inflammatory. It has a lot of sugar in it. It opens the place where your nutrients get absorbed into your small intestine. It makes those openings looser, so larger portions of your proteins and your carbohydrates get through, less digested, and this causes digestive disturbances. This is why some people can have a glass of wine and be fine, but they can't have a glass of wine and a pizza. They can have pizza by itself, they can have wine by itself, they can't have them together because they get that leaky gut with the alcohol loosening things. The other big ticket item that we think about, we have exercise, we have an anti-inflammatory diet, we have working on the head game. Really, people are loaded with anxiety, depression, irritability all across the board. Many people go into a cancer diagnosis already anxious or depressed or irritable. So it's when I think about whole person, whole medicine approaches, we're very interested in a person's mental state in terms of their cognitive, I'm going to talk about in a second, but talk about their emotional state. And I'm not a therapist, so I often send people for therapy. I have some wonderful colleagues nearby and who work by Zoom across the country. And really having people feel connected in terms of community and connections, an enormous piece of the psycho-emotional realm. COVID did not help with this, believe me. We also talk about in the book, and another theme through the book is ensuring adequate sleep. I would say we are in an epidemic of insomnia of all sorts. Can't fall asleep, can't stay asleep, quality of sleep poor, waking early, all across the board. Many people who are living a very healthy lifestyle and don't believe in medication, don't think they are taking something like Ambien or Trazodone or something else to sleep. And there are many natural medicine approaches to use for sleep. I have a chapter in the book on sleep, but that, it's kind of like rising tides raise all ships. Good sleep helps pretty much everything. So that's important. Other big themes, as a dyed-in-the-wool naturopathic doctor, I'm really interested in supporting your emunctories. Your emunctories are those systems in your body that help to get rid of the natural metabolites of the digestive process, as well as some of the external, exogenous, if you will, toxins in our lives. So we can control, what we put in our mouth, what we put on our body, different kinds of things we use in cleaning products in our home. Those should be swapped out as we use them up for ones that don't contain chemicals, including hair dye, makeup that people use. People should never use an antiperspirant. We don't want to clog the pores. The 4 emunctory systems include having a good bowel movement, that is digestive process each day or every other day. Some people is okay. Urinating adequately. Sweating is another form of ridding ourselves of toxins. And then breathing, something as simple as breathing. When we breathe out, we are letting out some toxins as well. So when we do that double whammy of reducing toxin exposure as much as we can, and then also stimulating and supporting the emunctory systems of the body to do the best job they can over the length of our lives. And there's a lot of people who are constipated. Believe me, I people who just, this has been an issue for people for years and years and years. So we really work on the microbiome. The microbiome is everything between the clavicle and the hip bones. That's not an organ, a bone, a joint, a ligament. It's the kind of milieu, if you will, the soup that everything is living in. And about 80% of our immune system arises from our microbiome and our gut. We also have microbiomes in other parts of our body. We have a whole microbiome in the nasopharynx. There's the vaginal for women microbiome, et cetera. But it makes sense that the biggest microbiome is in the gut. Why? Because we're constantly ingesting food that potentially could be harmful to us in a way. You could think of it that way. So we have a very well, evolutionarily speaking, a well-developed microbiome. And there are a lot of things that people do that make the microbiome not as robust and diverse as it could be. When the microbiome is not as robust and diverse as it can and should be, it impacts both the mood. There's a very strong gut-brain connection. It impacts the mood. It impacts cognition, literally being able to think well. It certainly impacts digestion, and it impacts immune system function. And for cancer survivors, we all have cancer cells floating around. And basically, people whose systems are working well and the genetics are working well in harmony, they go around and they're able to fight and get rid of those cancer cells so they can't continue to reproduce. They can't make a mass in a certain area. So when we are thinking about the immune system and really having an immune system working well, we know that part of that has to do with having a well-tuned microbiome. So what are the things that get the microbiome out of whack? Antibiotics. Hi, Nancy, welcome. And hi, Gurneet, good to see you here. One of the things that we know is that the microbiome is impacted by antibiotics. Some research says that if you take a round of antibiotics, let's say you have a strep throat or bad bladder infection or something like that, if you take a round of antibiotics, it takes about a year for your microbiome to get back to where it was before you took the antibiotics. That's a long time. And somebody with chronic sinus infections where every few months they're on an antibiotic, they never can really catch up. And that's not good. We also know that the soil, the microbiome of the soil in which our food is grown right now is not as good as it used to be. So we're fighting on a couple of different fronts, if you will. You can also injure your microbiome by drinking too much alcohol. Eating too many refined sugars is not going to be great. Eating a low fiber diet. The microbes in the microbiome need high fiber or prebiotics and mostly we like those from vegetable sources and whole grains. A lot of people ask me, do I need to take a prebiotic? And I'm like, well, not if you're eating a good diet. You really don't. And in this way, you can help rebuild your microbiome by eating a high fiber diet, by eating cultured and fermented foods every day. You don't need a whole bottle of kombucha. You can buy a bottle of kombucha, lasts you 2 weeks. Fork full of sauerkraut on your salad. You can have miso soup once in a while. Any of the kimchis are beautiful fermented foods, and your body knows how to take that in and really work with it. So microbiome, super important. All right, let's go back to the chat here. Marcia has written, I'm so excited for your book. I've been a caretaker for a cancer patient, and have a book like yours will add so much to all of our lives. Thank you, Marcia. And then let's see, Martha's saying air in Seattle area is the worst in the world today after a week of air declivity, downhill slope. Beyond air purifiers and masks, do you have any suggestions, especially for those thinking about their immune system? Such a heavy question. I think that we mostly are going to be working with patients for years, from injury to the lungs and the stress that the smoke will cause.
Yes.
There I am.
Sure. Hi, Nancy. Nice to see you. This is my wonderful agent, Nancy
Hello,
Rosenfeld.
Amy.
Wonderful to see you, Nancy. Thank you for being
Thanks,
here.
Cheryl. I had
Um,
trouble getting on, but I'm here.
Okay, no worries. You can catch it on the reruns. We're recording. So
Okay.
you love the beginning, I think. Um,
Okay.
Glad you're here, Nancy. And thank you for all the work that you did to get my book out into the world. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
But to answer your question, Martha, I think that doing things that help nourish and heal and soothe the lungs is very important. Continuing to work with breathing exercises at home, whether it's square breathing or alternate nostril breathing, giving your lungs some extra love and affection is very important. I love using castor oil packs topically when a part of the body feels like it's been through a lot of stress. So yeah. Okay, go feed your microbiome. Great. I would like to take time now to just open up the floor for your comments. You can unmute yourself, comments or questions. And I have more that I could read from the book, but I think you've heard from me quite enough, and I'd love to hear more from you. Two more messages here. Gina, congratulations on publishing your book, Amy. It looks fantastic. You're such a contributor to promoting health and the greater good. Thank you. I appreciate you and your many decades of contribution in the naturopathic medicine. Go forth, women, go forth. Gina is a dear friend who I've spent the last 2 winters in Puerto Rico with. So going to be sorry to miss that this year. Would anybody like to unmute and say anything or ask any questions? You're welcome to do so. If
Amy?
not, yes.
Hey, Sarah. Hey.
Hey, Sarah.
Wow. Thank you so much. This is incredible work. And it's true that this book applies to anyone, you know, whether we have cancer or whatever, any issue we're dealing with in our lives. I'm dealing with mental health and my brain, et cetera. I think it all applies. So this is kind of out there, and it's really, I'm just curious from a scientific standpoint, do you see anything coming down the pike regarding epigenetics and an ability in the future to be able to tell something around what's going on for us on an individual level by
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I think that 100%. I spent last week 2 days at a conference from the organization Forces, which stands for Facing Our Hereditary Cancers Empowered. I carry a genetic mutation, and you know, just listening in on the scientists related to the genetics of cancer, I do feel that there are a lot, there's so much that's going to be done, and it's going to not just be in cancer, it's going to be in many chronic illnesses. Yes, I mean, things come down through the genes, but we're not sentenced to what our genes say. The genes also have to get expressed through our personal individual environment. So it's not only the genes, you know, it's how the genes interact with our physical bodies, with our own choices that we've made, with experiences, traumas, medications, surgeries, events that we have had. So that's why, like in my situation, I have the BRCA mutation. I said at this conference, and I've said it again and again, and whoever will listen to me, you know, I really think the people we should be studying are the people who have the BRCA mutation, who never get breast cancer and never get ovarian cancer. There's something very interesting there for us. And I think that's true across the board with genetic mutations. I was speaking today to a colleague about the recent study that came out of Europe about how colonoscopies maybe aren't all they were cracked up to be. And, you know, I read the study, I went back and I read the abstract, and I read the whole study, and it's like, that's not really what they were saying. What they were saying is that genetically, some people really have a risk factor for developing colorectal cancer. So those people obviously need to get a colonoscopy, and other people also do, people with a family history, without a genetic mutation, people who have had radiation to the abdomen for other cancers, people who have had chronic inflammatory bowel disease. But each step of the way, you know, the thing with colonoscopies, people don't want to do them because they're unpleasant to prepare for. But a colonoscopy is both prevention and treatment. If there are polyps there, they are removed, so those polyps can't develop into further cancers. But there are now genetic markers that can be used, genetic testing that can be done to see if you are more at risk for colon cancer. These are tests that should be done every second or third year. It's not something that you can only do once, like a colonoscopy, screening colonoscopies, they have reduced the age. This is just public service announcement here, from 50 to 45 now, with no family history and no other aggravating factors. First colonoscopy should be at 45. If it's clear there are no polyps, you don't need one for 10 years. But if you do the genetic test to take a look, see, it's every 3 years. And part of that is because the genetic tests keep getting better. They keep getting better. So the more information we have, the better off we are. And especially if it's information that's actionable. You know, like when they first started doing pap smears, they had no idea the effect it was going to have on reducing the incidence of cervical cancer and the death rate due to cervical cancer. Our death rates from cervical cancer in America have gone like that, down, 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 with the advent of the pap smear in the 1960s. And that is because it's preventive. When you do a pap smear, if you have a problem with HPV, they remove the HPV, which is one of the main causes of cervical cancer. So there's so many advances that are happening in science faster than we can. We have the problem with translational medicine, I said before. And on the other hand, we also have tremendous advances. And we're all going to be examining all of our genetics, or our children will be, so that we can be more proactive. If something is actionable, that's the best kind of information. Some people say to me, should I get the 23andMe? Should I do a whole genetic mapping? I was like, well, a lot of it's not actionable information. It's not actionable. So it's not actionable. I'm not sure how much it's worth for us. So, all right. And thank you for that question though. And I went on a little tangent, but I love to promote pap smears and colonoscopies because they do save lives. Paul, do you have any comments or questions?
Well, hi. Well, there's basically at least two aspects of this. One is the actual material, just about cancer and stuff. But one is about just the writing process, and just some people here might want to know more about, well, how do you get an agent, and how do you present to the public, and how do you get a book done, basically. So, which is separate from the topic itself, but some people might be interested in that part.
Yep. I did talk about that a little bit earlier.
Yep.
I'll tell you exactly how I found Nancy Rosenfeld. I have dear friends in the Pioneer Valley here where I live in Western Massachusetts, John Clayton and Sharon Clayton Dunn. They're both published authors, and Nancy represents them. And we were having dinner one night about a year ago. And I told them that I had completed a manuscript. They've been big fans of my work for many, many years, and advocates for natural and integrative medicine in general. And I mentioned that I had a manuscript, and I was thinking about trying to, I didn't want to self-publish, and I hardly got the words out of my mouth. And John said, well, I'm just going to introduce you to my agent. That's what happened. And so he wrote a very nice email on my behalf, I think. Or maybe Sharon wrote it. You would remember, Nancy.
I believe it was John. I think it was John. Maybe it was Sharon. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I know it was a lovely letter. And I take referrals very seriously, Paul.
A few upcoming things. Oh, you have a question, Marcia? Go ahead.
I was going to say, this sounds so exciting for young doctors that might be studying oncology in years to come, to have a reference book from your knowledge, and just the opportunity that it sounds like your book can offer to a new generation of young doctors coming forward.
It's a really good point, because one of the things I would say is that the younger oncology doctors that I have interfaced with, they're way more open. They're way more open. They're just more open because some of them grew up with natural medicine. They grew up, digital native. They've seen what's on the internet. They're just more open.